Hey everyone and welcome to the Redmen TV. This is the latest episode of the Deep Dive. I'm Ste Hall filling in for Chris Pajak. He's having a well-earned week away with the family. So I'm filling in alongside the wonderful Josh Williams who is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting on this show as the man who, it's his show really. I'm just here to facilitate Josh. Thanks very much mate for joining me. I'll do my best Pajak impression and I'll do as best as I can for him. We're going to be speaking about Dominik Szoboszlai today. He's been... received a little bit of criticism, I think it's fair to say, for his performance against Fulham. There's been pundits maybe suggesting that's an area the team Liverpool could and perhaps should look to upgrade in the summer. It's weird, Josh, because the first question is, it feels like Arne Slot's actually got 4 players who he trusts in those advanced midfield roles. He's got Szoboszlai, McAllister, Elliott, Jones. Probably flip those last two, actually, Jones then Elliott. If you were looking at the Liverpool squad as a whole, you wouldn't suggest that is the area of need in terms of priorities, but there are a lot of people out there suggesting that could be something Liverpool could and should do in the summer. Yeah,
well, that's why it's a talking point today. Like, I am conscious that whenever you have a bad result, people start reeling out the hit pieces and like, you know, just... babies in bathwater. Just like, right, now's my time to slate the player I don't like. But Szoboszlai does get hooked on 55 and he was poor. Yeah, he was poor. He was poor, to be fair. But some of the tweets and things like that I was seeing, I just think it's an interesting one because some people genuinely think we need a new 10. Some people genuinely think he needs to be upgraded. I think one of those people, for example, is Jamie Carragher. That I've seen him say that a few times now. And I think it's one that, like, say for example, the left back. I would hope that that's a universally agreed position that we need to upgrade left back. I think the 10, I don't think it's the case. I think it's a mixed bag. I think if you ask 50 people, 25 of them would say it'd say yes, from 25 would say no. So I think it's an interesting one because you say there about all the players that we've got to fill a spot. We have got options there. We have got good players who can play there. I think Szoboszlai himself is good. But there's an element to his game that he's lacking, obviously, that we're going to touch on. But yeah, he's definitely a talking point. Like,
it's strange because, like I say, if you were looking at the summer and you were prioritising Liverpool's needs, for lack of a better phrase, left back, right back, centre forward, centre back, DM, all probably come ahead of this number 10 thing. So, unless you think Liverpool are going to do wholesale changes and 6-7 lads leave and 6-7 lads come in, it's actually hard to figure out if there's an area where they will upgrade. The only way I think it might happen is if Harvey Elliott leaves, and I think that is definitely a possibility here because of the game time or lack of. There were rumours around the last window where Dortmund and Brighton were sniffing around him. So yeah, it's fascinating really because, and we're going to speak about it now. Is Dom Szoboszlai doing exactly what the manager wants, and Arne Slot's made up with him? Does he want more? Because the main criticism, and we might as well talk about it now, is the lack of goals and the lack of assists. And Arne Slot did reference this. It was a few months ago now in a press conference. He said, yeah, you know, you play number 10 for Liverpool, you're attacking midfield, you're expected to score and assist more. I know we've got some data to back it up, but like that is the area of Dom Szoboszlai's game where you know he can do it because we've seen him do it and he's done it a number of times. It just hasn't been enough.
Yeah, I think that's what's annoying about it. I think, say for example, a player like Jordan Henderson, you just kind of knew it's not really his game. You don't expect goals and assists from him. I mean, it was a bit more of a midfield 3 back then anyway, so it was a bit more of an 8 than a 10. But with Szoboszlai, I think it's reasonable for us to expect a bit more because he looks creative on the eye. He looks like he's got really good technique. He looks like he can strike a ball really cleanly. You know, that hungry goal that we see every international break, he can certainly strike a ball on that. He can take the odd set piece and things. But his actual number of returns is quite poor. When you look at, I think the big thing for me is he's playing for a team at the moment that are 11 points clear in the Premier League. That should be an advantage, but it's not. If you compare him to some of his peers, which again we're going to do, he falls short a little bit. But obviously, I think it's important to note that like we recognise what he does do. I think that's obviously why he's in the team. You know, the amount of ground that he covers and things like that. But I think that's the weird thing about it. I think when we signed him and the first couple of months of experience and what he's like and all that, I don't think we'd have expected, like, you know, 2 years later or whatever, for him to be essentially a James Milner.
I was about to say, and we will bring the videos up in the graphics in a minute to compare to people, but like, goals aren't infinite. There's only a certain amount of goals a team can score. and there's only a certain amount of assists a team can get there for. And if Mo Salah is getting all of them, or the vast majority, it feels like it isn't just right if Szoboszlai scores more than Liverpool just score more goals. Usually there's a balance. I mean, Liverpool aren't going to win every game 5-0. Do you think some of this is the case, is that actually there's a fella playing on the right wing who gets more than his fair share? The left winger is often, the next in line, whether that's Diaz or a Gakpo. There are other players in the team who actually get those chances and get those before it's him. Even, for example, our number 9s don't score that many, but they probably get themselves in positions to score more. So if goals aren't infinite, is it a little bit harsh on Szoboszlai? If he's part of a team that's 11 points clear, are going to be Premier League champions, he's played the vast majority of the games. I mean, Arne Slot, and he could say, well, what more? Why do I need to score the goals? There's a fella over there doing it plenty of times for us. It's only actually when Mo Salah goes through a dry patch, like he kind of is now for him, that these things start getting picked up on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think the team is kind of in place to almost give Salah the keys, basically to unlock Salah. And if you look at the numbers that Salah's posted this season, he's broke his own record a few times, I think, already. So that makes sense. And Salah obviously doesn't really defend. You've got Szoboszlai on that side covering for him. Trent is a bad defender in my opinion. Szoboszlai covers that. So he's got a lot of work to do beyond stuff in the final third. But because it's Liverpool and because he is in the final third so often, I think the Salah stuff, the numbers that Salah's got versus Szoboszlai, I would wonder if that was entirely the plan. Like, Salah has all the numbers, which is great, but in an ideal world, would Slot maybe take 10 of them off Salah, goals and assists, and give them to Szoboszlai? I think that would probably have, I think if Salah wasn't on the pitch and it was someone who just returned a little bit less and the onus was on Szoboszlai to do a bit more, could he?
Yeah.
I think that's the question.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. Because for me, it's a bit like Liverpool don't score from set pieces. Worst in the league are scoring from set pieces. That's one area that you could get better at. The midfielders probably don't score that many goals, but then they're going to be champions. They're going to be up there. And, if you look at the Premier League table, I think they're way up there in terms of the highest scorers as well. So it's a bit like one of those things. If you just steal from Peter to pay Paul, I think what you just said there would be more sustainable. Because if Salah has a bad run, and Salah's probably is having a little bit of a bad run now, where he's banked all these numbers, he's got us into a position where we're going to be champions. But when he doesn't play, I think that's when the focus shines on these other lads, if that makes sense. So if Salah isn't scoring or assisting, that's when these all come out. Actually, when Salah's scoring and assisting, and the team are winning every single week like they were, pre-Christmas, nobody really talks about this. But in this last couple of weeks where things have gone a little bit tough, and also, mate, I think it's worth mentioning, like, Szoboszlai was bad. It wasn't just not scoring at the weekend, like blind passes around the corner, giving the ball away. He just looked miles off it, and therefore spotlight's on him. And by the way, he never scores, he never assists. It feels like sometimes it can just be a little bit of a pile-on. It might just be that he's doing the job, because Arne Slot, it may be to a fault, picks him all the time.
Yeah. Well, I understand why he picks him, because of the nature of the team and things like that. I think that one of the issues I've got with it is just, If this is your formation, like you're playing like that, that's kind of how Liverpool sets up in the final third, really.
Like a 4-2-4 almost.
Yeah. Well, if you're playing there, like, to an extent, you have to score an assist. It goes back to what Slot said at the start of the season, where, like, we expect more returns from, like, yes, Salah's doing a lot of it. Yes, the team functions as a whole. But even still, if you're playing there, the penalty box is there. So there's got to be an emphasis on getting returns, because that's ultimately how you win games. And if you look at Szoboszlai's returns so far, I think in the Premier League, he's on a total of 8 goals and assists combined.
Yep.
Which just isn't a lot for a player who is a regular starter for the best team in the league, best team in the league by a distance, and a very offensive team that shoots the most. Liverpool have the most XG every game. Over the course of the season, Liverpool have got the highest shot count, for example, things like that. So there's definitely a ceiling on what you can do. You can't just go and win every game 10-0, can you? But I do think that, like, in an ideal world, I think Slot would would give him a bigger slice of the pie if he wanted it, but he doesn't seem hungry.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Shall we compare him then? Because you have got to be. So, in terms of Szoboszlai compared to maybe the where he sits in terms of his peers and stuff, for those listening, I'll explain it. But this graph that Josh has, it's got non-penalty assists and goals per 90 in terms of XG, and then actually non-penalty goals and assists as well. And Szoboszlai, looking at some of the names around him, Garnacho, Ismail Assar, Belgrade from Wolves, like he's better than, like he should be more up towards this end here with Justin Kluivert, Anthony Elanga, Madueke, Owatra. Is that what you're suggesting really? You would like to see the Szoboszlai further to the right and actually higher up on this axis?
Yeah, well, if you look at this is basically just attack and output of every player in the league except goalkeepers. I've removed goalkeepers, and every player there has played at least 15 full 90s.
Yeah.
So it's a good sample, and on one axis, as you say, you've got actual returns. On the other axis, you've got expected returns, and then obviously players kind of fit somewhere in between that. So obviously Salah, the biggest output merchant in the league.
That's a joke, really, isn't it?
I know, it's crazy.
And he's actually not far behind him.
Well, that's why Liverpool are interested, I assume. Then Haaland, and then a group of loads of players. You can see where Szoboszlai is, though. Szoboszlai is completely detached from players who I would expect them to be on a level ground with. For example, players in the same spot as him, like Justin Kluivert, James Maddison, Matthias Cunha, Cole Palmer. They, for me, are literally his rivals at other clubs that aren't as good as Liverpool this season. And Szoboszlai's level of return is he's just quieter in the final third. He's just doing less when it comes to goals and assists. And there's more to the game, obviously, I appreciate that, but there's still just that simplistic side of it that's a bit like, but you need more than that. It's just not, you know what I mean?
Again, and we'll never know because it's one of them. If Mohamed Salah's that far over on that graph, it's hard for anyone else. But like I say, Curtis Jones is in terms of actual goals and assists is further along than Dom Szoboszlai. And actually, if you said to me at the start of the season who's a bigger goal threat, Szoboszlai or Jones, I think everyone would say Szoboszlai should be. But actually, Curtis Jones, in terms of actually getting the goals and assists per 90, is more likely to do that than Dominik Szoboszlai. Only just.
Yeah.
But I think that's where, and by the way, Curtis Jones has played right back and Curtis Jones has played number 6 a bit. You know what I mean? Dominik Szoboszlai is predominantly when he played been as a 10, so it's definitely something to have a look at. Is it a problem though, really? Is the next question. Before we move on to comparing them to other players, is it only a problem when the forwards look like they're having a bit of a dry spell? Because if the forwards are playing fine, and if Liverpool had won 4-0 the other day and Mohamed Salah had scored a hat-trick, would we be having this conversation?
Well, it's definitely a luxury problem, I'll give you that. Yeah. And I think that the team is set up for the wide players to get in the goals. Like, I'm talking about the 10 here. But in reality, the 9, even this season, has been quiet on the offensive end. So we haven't got that many returns just centrally, to be honest. It is a little bit weird. So I suppose technically it's not really a problem. But I just think you'd like a bit more of a spread. Like if we go back to that first viz just very quickly, I think in an ideal world, I think Slot would accept Salah being level with Isaac.
Yeah.
And as a result, Szoboszlai maybe being level with Madueke.
Yeah.
Something like that. Something a bit more even, something a bit more spread out and
it's
stuff. It's
definitely more sustainable.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Because like the comment is, if Salah doesn't perform, who scores? And actually we're seeing that a little bit now.
Yeah.
Salah's having a bit of a tough time of it. Whether it's fatigue, Ramadan was mentioned, maybe he's just having a bit of, because he's a human being. And okay, where's the goals coming from? Now Liverpool did score 2 goals the other day, but again, the second goal comes, one's a worldie and one's when the manager goes hell for leather and puts every attacker possible on the pitch at the same time. They're not sustainable ways of scoring goals. So I suppose that's where it's heightened more, Josh, if Salah has a little bit of a bad run. He's entitled to. He's not a robot as much as he acts like one. So maybe it's a bit of that.
But I think what you said there, though, is an important... When you said there, like, does it matter? That's kind of the point of the show. Like, I don't actually have an answer for that.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments.
It's like an open-ended question, really. It's just, with us losing the game, you can maybe touch on something that's a little bit more negative than usual. But it is one of them that, like, given the different opinions on it throughout the fan base, it's one of them that's just a curious one for me to listen to what people think, because some people are genuinely really straightforward with, oh yeah, you can upgrade on him 100%. But the thought of upgrading on him, for me, I've got that thought in the back of my head where we'll probably concede more. And I don't want us to concede more.
Yeah, and that's the question. So let's compare them then, because the next viz actually comparing them to other players who play in a similar area to him in terms of the goals and assists per 90. And for those listening, I'll explain it. James Maddison is at the top. Actually, he's very involved in Tottenham's attack and play. Matheus Cunha, Cole Palmer, Justin Kluivert, Morgan Rogers, Morgan Gibbs-White and Bruno Fernandes all sit above Szoboszlai. Actually, he's a little bit above Martin Ødegaard. I know Ødegaard's had injury issues, but still, that's maybe a bit of a surprise as well. So the question is, Josh, and I'll go through it. Are Liverpool a better team if any of those lads above, Maddison, Cunha, Palmer, Kluivert, Rogers, White, Fernandes, are Liverpool a better football team if one of those players who score and assist more replace Dominik Szoboszlai in the 11? I think that's a very difficult question.
That's a very good question.
And that's why I've asked you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think if we go back to it quickly, I would say the top two players who are scoring and assisting the most, I'm pretty confident in saying Liverpool would be a worse team with those two players in the side.
Well, James Maddison doesn't really play for Tottenham that much. Like he's very he's never always in Tottenham's first 11, and Tottenham are crap, and I've got all those injuries.
And I think Matheus Cunha is very much an individual for me. You wouldn't get him doing the track and back that for Salah or covering Trent or whatever. I think there's some players in there that I think I'm trying to find someone who would give you roughly as much defensive output, but just more offensive output in the final third.
Because Cole Palmer's the interesting one. We've got a chat here saying, someone says Cole Palmer would instantly make them better. He would make them better attacking. Probably, like he is a goals. I think he's fabulous. Yeah. But will he do the running that Mo Salah needs someone to do for him?
You'd probably need that elsewhere, wouldn't you?
That's. I think to have Salah and Palmer in the same team, for example, there's two lads who aren't really interested in defending. And then you mentioned before, the right back isn't brilliant at it at this moment in time. I think that at that point the balance comes between. It gets a little bit like when I don't know if you mad reference Lee Carsley managed England for a couple of games, and there's that one game he just put all the attacking lads on, and he couldn't defend, and he got the balance wrong, and it feels like the only one Gibbs, White, and Rogers maybe a little bit more because they're a bit more box to box.
I was thinking Gibbs, White. Yeah,
I like Gibbs, White. A good player.
Gibbs, White is someone who probably does give you the industry, but on top of that, I think is probably more of a box threat. Very creative, links to play really well for Forest, I think, despite them never having the ball. So he's one I would be interested in.
I really like Morgan Rogers.
Apparently.
I think Morgan Rogers is a fabulous player. And again, Aston Villa, PSR issues, maybe you can do something there, but they're about to do the Chelsea thing of selling their women's team to balance the books, which is completely legal and a mad thing that you're allowed to do. But yeah, I think those two. I think if you said those two in, they will give you the defensive output and also maybe score a bit more. And then Fernandes is different. That's just never going to happen.
No.
Because just for a number of different reasons. We do have a super chat here from AJ who says... AJTTY says, I think Szoboszlai could benefit from Trent leaving. He wouldn't have to track back as much, so won't be as gassed and can focus more on the middle and final third. Maybe then we could see more goals and assists. It's a good point. Let's say if next season Trent goes, which we presume he is at this point, it'd be a miracle if he doesn't, and leave it's Conor Bradley's position, for example, or another right back of similar ilk. If they're better defensively and don't go on walkabout and you're not too worried about him, does that just free Dominik Szoboszlai up to focus on more of these things that we're speaking about?
Yeah, it probably does. He doesn't have to come back as much and the right back can take care of himself a little bit more and he wouldn't go roaming like Trent does into all different spaces and things like that. But on top of that, if you think of, again, going back to this balance thing, that having just a better right back defensively could then give you scope if you wanted to do business to go and maybe get a Palmer potentially. Obviously, we're not going to do that. I'm just saying, I think if the team as it is being this season with Trent as the right back, if you was to take Liverpool starting 11 this season, take Szoboszlai out and put Palmer in, I think I agree with you in that it'll probably be overload, probably overkill. If you was to take Trent out and put a more defensive minded right back in, then maybe you have scope to do a little bit more of the Palmer stuff where you're bringing in someone who's a bit more offensive in the 10. But I always talk about this as it's like a recipe, really. It's like balancing a recipe, and sometimes the ingredients that make the whole thing pop, if you put too many of them in, it doesn't taste very nice.
It's just too spicy.
Exactly, exactly. So I think Szoboszlai is one of those key ingredients who isn't in the spotlight, if you get what I mean. I think the others are everywhere, really. If you take Trent out, maybe then you've got scope to get... You see what I mean? It's like, it's a balancing act, really.
And also, without Alexander-Arnold, the onus will fall on somebody else to be more creative, and maybe that plays into... Because the next viz, actually, I found this one very interesting. It's non-penalty XG and XAG, expected assist per 90. Szoboszlai's actually fourth here. Cole Palmer, Mateus Cunha, James Maddison all above him.
Yeah.
He's now gone above Clive, Fernandez, Rodgers, Gibbs, White. Those lads were all above him on the previous actual goals and assists. So therefore, you can suggest, Josh, maybe he might be underperforming a little bit because he's getting in the right places. He's getting into positions actually where you'd expect him to score an assist. He just isn't doing it as consistently as perhaps some of the rival players, similar players in the league. Is that what that data suggests to you?
Yeah, well, the important thing about this one is like it sums up the theme of the show, really, in that this is an open-ended question without an agenda. So rather than me just showing a load of business that make him look bad, he's not bad. He's a good player, and I suppose this is what's interesting in that this viz is exactly the same as the last viz you just shown, but the last viz is actual output. This viz is expected output. So for whatever reason, he's either underperforming with his shooting, or his teammates are underperforming with the finishing, as in he should have more assists, or his peers are overperforming. I know for certain Mateus Cunha's overperforming with, like, you know, loads of goals from distance and things like that. He's just very good at doing that. So it's an interesting one.
So Szoboszlai, for clarity, Josh, just like in terms of, so he gets around 0.35 goals or assists per 90 minutes. His expected goals or assists per 90 minutes is around about 0.53, something like that. So, and is that quite a significant difference per 90 minutes? That will stack up. Those 0.2%. Effectively, he should be getting a goal or an assist every other game, is what by the positions he gets himself into, and actually he's getting a goal or an assist around every third game. That goes from obvious one, but say you play 60 games, that goes from 30 goals and assists to 20 goals and assists. That is a significant number. Yeah,
especially I'm going to say it's significant if you're playing a lot of minutes, and Szoboszlai is. Szoboszlai, I think he's played, 29 appearances in the Premier League this season. Obviously one of Liverpool's main starters. So looking at those numbers, I was a little bit maybe surprised, because that's the kind of stuff that if you do look at in relation to the actual product on the last viz, that suggests that maybe, like, if you just persist, he might go through a spell sooner rather than later where, I don't know, where he like maybe scores in 3 consecutive games, and we all talk about an upturn when in reality he's always been in the spots, he's always been getting the shots, he's always been creating the chances, but the returns maybe haven't followed. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that one, to be honest. I was a little bit surprised, like, but
he's just getting a lot of good positions. Like, you can't argue that. Maybe he is underperforming. Leighton asked a question in the super chat: how much this issue could be is us having a number 9 who's offered virtually nothing in general play all season? See, I think the 9s, that is the big. I've got no idea what we ask our 9s to do it. I think still, I've got no idea. They don't really score. They don't really get involved in the build up. They just kind of there and thereabouts, and occasionally you might get one or something mad might happen, but. Yeah, if you're the number 10, your job primarily is to assist the number 9. You usually, in most teams now, it's again Liverpool have Mo Salah, that's a different kettle of fish, is the fact that maybe Jota, Nunes, it was Luis Diaz for a while, who was more, again, he wasn't a number 9, he was a whatever fake or whatever false 9. Is that maybe part of this? If your strikers are playing better, therefore that makes it easier for your number 10 to assist them?
Yeah, I think another key thing on that as well is that the better the 9 is, that the more kind of gravity he has with opponents, so the more interest opposing central defenders will have on that. Say, for example, you're facing Isaac or Haaland, you put 2 men on because he's that good. So that would free up space for Szoboszlai. But if Liverpool haven't really had that focal point all season, really, I think Nunes is probably the most in the mould of a focal point, but he probably offers the least when it comes to an all-round game. He's very specific in what he does, Nunes. So it's a good point. Again, it's another good point. I think if Szoboszlai can feed someone who's going to finish all the time, if he can benefit from that player attracting interest from defenders and he can get a bit more space himself, you know, it probably would have an impact on things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely spot on. Shall we compare him to his peers in terms of progressive passes per 90? Because this is interesting. Again, this is where Odegaard comes into his own. I think he's fantastic at this, getting the ball forwards quickly. Doesn't score many, but he, again, give it to the good lads who can score maybe. Fernandes is above him considerably. Maddison, Palmer, Gibbs, White, Cunha, they're all above him. He's just above Justin Kluivert. Morgan Rogers actually isn't as high on this list. Again, the progressive pass per 90 thing, is this because Josh, again, simple, he often is the furthest forward of the three. He hasn't really got anyone he can really progressive pass it to. Yeah. It's often when Szoboszlai gets the ball, he's passing it wide to Mo Salah or passing it wide to Luis Diaz or Cody Gakpo or dropping it off to Alexis McAllister. Because he plays so far up the pitch, that's actually quite difficult. Fernandes, Odegaard to an extent, Palmer does this, Maddison a little bit, they all drop in. We don't really see Szoboszlai often do that too much and then fire it forwards. Yeah. If he drops in, it tends to be just, I'll give it to Trent or I'll give it to Mo to do that for me. Again, it's more like that facilitator role than perhaps taking the onus on himself. Yeah,
well, that's an important point again. You know, I think there's different types of 10s and some engage in build-up more than others. I do think Szoboszlai engages in build-up for Liverpool. We saw him attempt to engage in the build-up of Fulham. Didn't really work very well. So he does bits of it.
It worked well for Fulham.
Yeah,
we played some great passes to their 10, yeah.
But Odegaard drops very deep often for Arsenal. Yeah. Bruno Fernandes has played in central midfield sometimes for Man United under rumour having him. And James Maddison, I think, was playing as an 8 for Postecoglou at points this season. So they've all been dropping deeper. So it's understandable that they're kind of on their own there. Palmer's probably the most progressive of the actual 10s. I spoke before about Gibbs White being a really progressive link player for Forest Link and Hudson-Odoi and Elanga with the rest of the team, basically. So I think with Szoboszlai there, I'm not too surprised. I would maybe want a bit more. I think you could ask him maybe to chase Palmer a little bit more. But he does occupy a really high spot on the pitch. That's why we're criticising him for the goals and assists, so it's difficult for him to be progressive. What I will say on top of that as well, though, any completed pass into the box is deemed to be a progressive pass.
He doesn't do that though, that's my point. Every pass he makes, he just gives it to Salah out wide or goes there, or he goes. It's very rarely you see Szoboszlai fire one into a centre forward or play one in behind. That usually will be someone else's role. And this is kind of the point I was going to bring on, because you know who's really good at that? Harvey Elliott. The numbers obviously won't be there because he hasn't played as many games, but I think that is something Harvey Elliott looks to often. Yeah, it's his first thought is, can I get it into a gap? Can I get it into a space? Can I have a shot myself? Because it's almost upgradable. Can Liverpool buy someone brilliant in that role who does all this kind of stuff? Because if the manager was only bothered, Josh, about assists and goals, he would just pick Harvey Elliott. It feels like, well, we suggesting here there's a balance between the industry and work and the physicality and the running that Szoboszlai does, and the creativity and the goals and the guile of Harvey Elliott, and there might be a middle point in the middle where if you could, in an ideal world, you mould the best of those two players together, and it's, you know, it's Harvey Szoboszlai who plays for Liverpool.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I think the visits that we've shown so far, so we've touched on goals and assists, we've touched on expected goals and expected assists, and we've touched on progressive passes. I am convinced that if Elliott would have played the same minutes as Szoboszlai this season, he would be above him in all those departments.
No doubt. I don't think that's a question, yeah.
But would Liverpool be 11 points clear? I genuinely think, as mad as that sounds, because it sounds like it conflicts, it sounds like in theory, if you're offering more in attack or whatever, if you're offering more on the ball, you will be a better team. But again, it's the balance thing. It's what you lose without Szoboszlai's running power, without his height, without his ability to coordinate a press at times and things like that. Although he does sometimes get a bit lost. So yeah, I take the point completely. You know, it's a difficult one, that.
You know who to solve all these problems? Steven Gerrard. Yeah. Every team should just have a Steven Gerrard in midfield who can do everything, all of these things brilliantly, and everything will be fine. Just go and buy Steven Gerrard.
We could just say that every single deep dive. Every deep dive, no matter what we're talking about, we should just have a point where we go, you know, we solved this, Steven Gerrard.
Can someone at the academy just make the next Gerrard and all this will be absolutely fine? Yeah, because we were so blessed with that fella. And like I say, the final is, very quickly, Josh, on this one would be progressive passes received. And again, Kluivert, Odegaard, Cunha, Rogers, Palmer, all behind him. All ahead of him. They get them more often, which is mad because we say Odegaard drops deeper, and yet he's still on the receiving end of more passes.
I think this is the one that I'm uncomfortable with Szoboszlai, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're going to be up the pitch, but you don't score and you don't assist, and actually you don't pass it forward yourself, you would expect your job then would be to receive those passes. Or Liverpool just passing to everybody else and not to Szoboszlai. This one makes very little sense.
Yeah, I know. I don't really get it too much myself. Because you made some great points there on the last one in terms of should you expect Szoboszlai to be playing progressive passes? But if you're not expecting him to play them, you would surely expect him to receive them as a advanced 10 who's playing basically in the hole, the traditional hole of the pitch between the opposition midfield and defence. But he doesn't really. I mean, to be fair, he's not too far off Cole Palmer. There's not a lot in that. You're talking about marginal things there, but Kluivert's in a different league. Odegaard is as well. Cunha, and this is despite particularly Cunha playing for a much worse team in Wolves, who have been fighting relegation all season. So I think there's definitely enough in there with his on ball stuff to suggest he's a bit weird, I suppose is maybe the word, but he still feels valuable in a weird sort of way.
Mate, I said the other day, there are games where you can pick him for me, and there are games when Harvey Elliott's a better option. And I think both are true. I think if Harvey Elliott was a foot taller, a little bit quicker, he'd probably just play him. Because then he would be able to offer everything. Szoboszlai, and again, we are not criticising Szoboszlai, we're just talking about his impact on the game. Because Liverpool's manager picks him all the time. So the only two reasons he does that, Josh, A, he thinks he's boss, or B, he thinks the other options are crap. They're the only two reasons why he plays every game. And I edge towards it, he thinks he's boss. When he talks about the best players, he mentioned Elliott, he said, I feel really sorry for Elliott, but he's competing with Szoboszlai and Salah. And he mentioned those two in the same breath. He'll say all the time, he said it for Curtis, I love Curtis Jones, but it's McAllister and Szoboszlai who are playing ahead of him. Yeah. He mentions Szoboszlai in the same breath that he does his best players. McAllister, Szoboszlai, Salah, Trent, Van Dijk. The way he speaks about them all, he seems to put Szoboszlai on that level. So therefore, it must just be the other things to his game that Arne Slot is happy with. Because yes, I would like him to score and assist more, but he is still a valuable part of this team. That's the messaging that you seem to get from Arne Slot if you read between the lines a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because I think you could make a genuine argument that Harvey Elliott is a better footballer than Szoboszlai, which is a mad thing to say. But I think the athletic difference between the two of them is a chasm.
Yeah.
So that's where Szoboszlai, and I think the footballing difference between the two is really small. I think if Elliott is the better footballer, there's not much in it, whereas the athletic difference is massive. So by playing Elliott, I agree with you. I think you play Elliott. I would play Elliott more, I think, in certain games. But I think if you're picking a pecking order, if you're picking you're going for the league, who am I hanging my hat on? It probably is Szoboszlai, despite everything we've touched on in a way as well. I think the big thing I'm touching on here though with this show is what we've seen, the kind of thing, not just the numbers, but with the eyes all the season and all that, is what we've seen, the kind of thing that you would look at from a squad building perspective and think, we can upgrade this year, we can do better here. And I honestly think it's a difficult one to answer that. I would lean towards no, I think it's fine.
Yeah, so would I.
But I understand both sides.
No, I just think I don't think it would be that easy to offer someone who offers the athletic profile that Dominik Szoboszlai does and what isn't necessary for this team and scores loads of goals. That player, again, it's Steven Gerrard. They are unicorns. They are very, very rare. Odegaard isn't really that. He's not maybe a little bit, but not as much. Kluivert, maybe, but again, that's one little tiny bit of a season. And again, he's full of the way Bournemouth, they do play. But
he's really short as well.
And he's tiny. Yeah, and I was about to say, that's my next point on this very quickly, Josh. The fact that Liverpool do have Alexis McAllister, who's brilliant and will play no matter what, he's a little fella. And Mo Salah's quite a little fella. And Diogo Jota's quite a little fella. Like at some point, it must put you off putting Harvey Elliott in and thinking, my God, we just looking at this team, we look little. Yeah. And there must just be something in that. Of course, it's just natural for a manager to go, set pieces, or we're going to get bullied off the ball here, the way that you hate with all the duels. Like, it's all that kind of... It must play a part in it because Szoboszlai is a big, strong, athletic lad. And listen, he's not shit. Like, we are not saying Dominik Szoboszlai is crap.
No, absolutely not.
But the way people speak about him is, you can just upgrade Szoboszlai. that feels difficult.
Yeah,
I don't know who those players are who are attainable. So you've got to be 6 foot, run like a machine, like an engine, score and assist every other game, be available to play. And by the way, you've got to buy a right back, a centre back, a DM, a striker, maybe another winger.
Yeah.
That player himself probably has £100 million player, whoever he is. It feels very difficult to do that. You're almost looking for a unicorn here. You're looking for a £20 million lad who's Steven Gerrard. Like, I don't know how you do that in the market. It's impossible.
Yeah. I think one of the issues when you think about it is, if you look at Szoboszlai, obviously he plays here. If you look at the lads around him, as in him, and him, it feels like they all depend on him to some degree because of their inabilities, if you want. Like, say, for example, McAllister. I think McAllister's our best midfielder, personally.
Yeah.
But he's the most limited physically.
Yeah.
So he leans on Szoboszlai maybe a little bit to cover ground. Salah doesn't defend. Trent can't really defend in my eyes. So they're all kind of dependent on this player.
And even Gravenberch, maybe, because he isn't a natural defensive midfielder. That he probably needs help at times as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It feels like he's like the I don't know if facilitator is the right word, but it's a bit like if you take him out, say, let's take Szoboszlai out, and now it's Harvey Elliott, for example. You might be better going forward, but is Salah better or worse? Probably better, I would say, in terms of getting the ball. But does he have to run back more? And therefore you're worse. Is Trent better or worse now? Well, maybe again, he's got someone to pass to, fantastic, but we're getting caught out on the break a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It feels like he's carrying the piano. You know what I mean? If you need so many players in the team who are going to carry the piano for you.
Is it a bit Wijnaldum-esque? Different position, but like Gini Wijnaldum didn't really score many or assist many. But when he didn't play, you didn't half notice that he wasn't playing. I wonder if Szoboszlai was just taking out the team for a month. Shit. You know what I mean? Does it get better or does it get worse? I think that would be a really difficult question. We don't know the answer to that.
I think what I would say is, let's say all the business that we had to do this summer was boxed. Let's say we didn't really need a 9. We didn't need a right back, Trent wasn't going or whatever. And we had minimal business to do. Just purely out of interest, in that scenario, would you have an interest in a 10? Or would you still be like, it's a position we don't need to do?
I think if it was Mo Salah 5 years ago, we could get back and defend a little bit. And your right back was more Conor Bradley, for example, a prototypical right back. And you had Alex Isak up front, for example. I think then your 10's almost a luxury. You don't need... You're boxed off at the back because you've got Virgil, Konate, you've got your time with your defence, maybe a left back, fair enough. McAllister and Gravenberch sound. Salah's getting up and down to do some of the running. Diaz, Gakpo sound, striker sound. And I think your number 10 could be a Maddison or could be... You just worry, lad, don't worry about it. Harvey Elliott, you just go and score us and assist loads. I think the way Liverpool play, I think that's really tough. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I do think sometimes the business that you need to conduct is overplayed with supporters. I think there's an art in knowing when you don't need to move almost, and I think this is maybe one of them. The only thing I'd say though, this is something I've thought about. See what your thoughts are on this one. So obviously he plays there. In my opinion, this summer we need a new midfielder, but to help out in these 2 spots to give these guys a break really. So, what I'm thinking of, what I've thought about is, right, Szoboszlai doesn't really score an assist. How do you take that responsibility away from him? Kind of retrain him, almost, to do bits here for you, minutes here, and buy a new 10. That's the only way I can think of how you could potentially navigate it while keeping Szoboszlai as a key member of the team. Maybe in that scenario, rather than buying a midfielder, like, who's sat down here to help out with Gravenberch, and that market's not great, you could just move Szoboszlai deeper and buy like a Gibbs White or something here. Be interesting to see how that would make the team look. Be interesting because Szoboszlai would still be on the pitch at times, at least. I mean, it'd be difficult with McAllister and Gravenberch. I mean, you'd have a fight there for.
I was going to say, we've got to remember as well, Liverpool paid a lot of money for Szoboszlai, and it was a release clause, and he paid it in one go.
He's also earning a lot of money as well.
Yeah, like him. It's difficult not to play him in that regard. Like if you went and signed someone better, first of all, it's going to cost you a fortune, and then you're looking as a manager going, my best 11. And I understand football's a squad game, but at some point you've got to pick your best 11, and especially Arne Slot, that's all he does. He doesn't play anyone else. Like he's looking at going, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, whoever. Say for example, it's Gibbs White or Morgan Rogers. Okay, so that's great, and maybe I can dip them in and out. But they're very different players, so you get it almost becomes like it's not reliable enough, if that makes sense, in terms of week to week.
Yeah, you're
changing a lot every single week. Where actually, I go back to it, Liverpool are going to be Premier League champions by a considerable margin because the blueprints worked. I like Szoboszlai. I think my answer to this, and I'll ask you in a minute, would be get him doing it better. He's in the right positions. Can he just do more when he gets there, rather than find someone else who's... I think Szoboszlai's got it in him to get better at this, coaching and the team around him. I don't think this is throw the baby out with the bathwater and go, right, you've got to go get someone else in. If I was signing another midfielder, it would be... Endo would probably have to... I like Endo, but I think Endo would probably go, and you bring someone in who's in that role of can play DM, can do a few minutes around the pitch. I think to buy a number 10 who adds more than Szoboszlai in a summer where there's potentially a lot to do, it might be 3/4 of your budget. That's who's available for that for a relative fee. I think that the answer, Josh, and I'll ask you the question now, is it just a case of getting Szoboszlai better at it?
Yeah,
working on his passing, working on his shooting, when to pass, when to shoot, linking up the play a little bit better rather than trying to just buy the solution to it. Because coaches coach. There's a reason coaches are paid so much money. It isn't just to buy the best players. Pep Guardiola might disagree, but then he also he makes them better, most of them. Like some Arne Slot, the coaching staff, get into Szoboszlai and improve him. Because Jurgen Klopp did that with a lot of players. You look at the Liverpool team, Mo Salah became better, Sadio Mane became better, they all became better with the coaching. Is this just a coaching issue perhaps for Szoboszlai? Yeah,
potentially. It's definitely a really good point, and I would agree on that. I think some players you have occupying a spot, and you're thinking to yourself, say for example, a fullback who is relatively limited, and your system needs your fullbacks to be creators, like Liverpool when they won the league with Robbo and Trent either side. If you've got a fullback there give me a bang average fullback, just someone who's just so ordinary that it's untrue.
Wan-Bissaka. He is the most ordinary right back ever.
So in a situation like that, if your right back's Wan-Bissaka in a team that needs the fullbacks to create, you have a problem. Because I don't think he's with all the coaching in the world, he's not creative. Full stop. There's just no way around it. So in that situation, you need to upgrade. You need to get a new player in. Yeah. I think in Szoboszlai's case, I think this is what's frustrating. There's no reason why he shouldn't score and assist more, because you just got to watch him. His technique, his ability to strike a ball, the spots he gets into, the players he's playing with. There's no reason why, looking at his skill set, he shouldn't be able to become more of an output merchant if that's what you want from him, and if you work on elements of his game and all that. It's worth saying as well, he's only 24. In another 2-3 years or something, he'll have been in the league for longer and all that, maybe a bit more experience with certain situations and things. But I think that's an important one. I think that if you go and buy let's have a look at some of these peers here. If you go and buy a Gibbs White or Rodgers or someone like that, you probably will be going through a similar training journey with them in terms of goals and assists, I suppose. So if you look at what Szoboszlai's got, the raw materials he's got, I do think you could probably get it out of him if you put the work in, if you could put the time into.
He's of a similar age. Rodgers 22, Gibbs White 25.
Gibbs White was younger than him.
Yeah, they're around a similar age in terms. I agree. I think so to answer the question that we asked at the start of the show, can you upgrade on Szoboszlai? I think that's a risk that I wouldn't take. If I would be, I'm a gambler. I'm usually take the head first and we'll deal with it later. For me, I wouldn't. I think I would go elsewhere in the team first and make other areas of the team better. I think maybe you could upgrade on Endo, because I like Endo. I think he's good, but the manager doesn't trust him. Maybe Elliott. I like Elliott. The manager doesn't like him, so maybe there's something there for it. But it's also it's a real difficult one. So I think my solution, if I could, and it was linear, Josh, would be get Szoboszlai better, get him working on this more, get his first full pre-season with a manager, by the way, who, where they're all around for 8 weeks and they're not, the players aren't, was it Virgil van Dijk joined the week before the season or something. They're going to have a proper summer with no international tournaments. They'll do a little bit of international duty at the end of the season, they'll get a full break, and then they can all go to Asia together and work on these stuff. I think that feels a better option to me for this particular, and if it is a problem, than perhaps going and spending £100 million in the transfer market, when I think that money is... There are areas of the team where I think that is needed. This feels a bit more like you're buying the curtains before you've realised that fixed the hole in the floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think if I was, to be honest, I came here today with a bit of a, it is an open-ended question. It's something that I didn't really have.
I never had an answer 45 minutes ago, but I think maybe we've
I think we've talked ourselves into the fact that we'd probably just stick rather than twisting. Because as you say, we've got other fires to put out. And I think the thing is with Szoboszlai as well, it's worth noting, if you do get it out of him, I mean, what a player you've got there. You know, if you think of him in comparison to Cole Palmer, if you can get anywhere near Palmer's level of output with far more on the defensive end, what Szoboszlai offers versus Palmer, you've got a serious player, and he's 6 foot odd, you know, and he's available all the time, you know, mobile. So I think that, as I said before, the raw materials are there. I'd probably dedicate the budget to, you know, left back and centre forward, and I'd look to upgrade Endo. You're
gonna need a right back as well.
Probably gonna need a right back, yeah. So yeah, it's absolute best for me. I think it's a luxury problem, but I don't even think it's that. No, it's barely that.
No, I agree. I'm with you. I think I think we've let us know in the comments and the thoughts, guys. What would you do with Szoboszlai? Is there something? How big of a priority is it for you? Because I think me and Josh have landed on it's not. And also the last point, Josh, we'll start wrapping up in a moment, mate. Is he is 24? You mentioned before, like he is not the finished article yet. There is still work to do. And by the way, he's in his second season in the league, and it's the second manager. You know, he was bought by one manager to a particular role, and about 2 months later, that manager decided he'd had enough. And fair enough, Jürgen's more entitled to do it. So therefore, I think to expect him to be perfection, I think it'd have been hard for him to be perfection even if Jürgen stayed. For him to be in a new change of system, in a new style of play, with a new coach and a new manager, etc. Are we just expecting a bit too much from all of from these young footballers? Because you play for Liverpool. There's a level. But the level is you should win the Premier League, and they're about to do that. I do wonder sometimes, are we just a bit OTT where, you know, again, throwing babies out with bathwater kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, potentially. But I think this comes from a place, though, of it's very simplistic to only talk about goals and assists. But again, it probably does need to be emphasised that the level of return we've had from him so far in the Premier League, it really isn't great. I mean, in his first season under Jürgen, he scores 3 times. And assists twice in the Premier League. This season he scored 5 times and assisted 3 times. Again, if we compare him to Palmer, realistically, it is his competition. Like Palmer last season scores 22 times and gets 11 assists. This season he's on 14 goals and 7 assists. Although there's a fair few pens in there, to be fair. Over the course of that, there is 12 penalties.
He is a great penalty. By the way, Szoboszlai can take pens. He just doesn't.
Yeah, he can. Yeah. So if you remove the pens, Palmer's on 13 goals last season, 11 goals this season. But again, 11 assists and 7 assists this season. So I do think Szoboszlai can definitely boost those numbers. You can definitely have a jump up there, and I think that's a reasonable criticism. I think if I was his manager and I was going into pre-season, despite appreciating everything he does, you know, the idea is to harvest as much as you can from. If
you're not getting better, you're standing still, aren't you? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So you've got to.
That would be the big thing for me, as in like you need to score and assist more. That I feel like that's what Pep is a master of doing. Pep's a master of going to like a young Lionel Messi, a young Raheem Sterling, and getting it into them. Listen, if you play in the final third, it's about goals and assists, and that is it. Just obsess over that. And since then, you know, Messi just took off and never forgot about that. Some players really good on the eye, really nice and all that, but no one really tells them at any point, mate, it's about goals and assists. Yeah. No one really told Eden Hazard that, for example. Eden Hazard could have done with a bit of Pep Guardiola, really. I think Szoboszlai can.
Ironically, Jeremy Doku could do with that, and he plays with Pep Guardiola.
Exactly. Yeah,
maybe there's a reason he might be getting bins off. We've got a comment here. Harrison says upgrading on Szoboszlai is a luxury. We have bigger issues. I think we would probably agree with that one as well. We have heard the manager say that Szoboszlai needs to score more. Says, yeah, it is definitely something. We're not excusing it that he shouldn't do it. I think
it'd be interesting to see if there's anyone still in the comments who still thinks we can upgrade. Like, is there anyone that disagrees? Do you know what I mean? Because he probably is. You know, I keep using him as an example, but Jamie Carragher's one of them. He covers Liverpool, he covers Sky and all that, so, you know, he's got a respected opinion and things. So I think the fact that someone as in the spotlight as he is, as obsessed with football as he is, thinks it suggests that there's something in there. Any comments?
Yeah, I'm having a little look at here. Darren says maybe you could swap his position with McAllister.
I've seen a few people say that, yeah. I would lean towards a no, I think. I really love how... I think McAllister's our biggest tempo setter.
Yeah, why wouldn't move McAllister? He's great.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
I think that there's certain players you just play and you have to mould to them. I wouldn't change McAllister for anything. I think he's fine.
Having said that, I think if McAllister, if he did swap, I do think both of them would do a pretty decent job. But McAllister would struggle more with the Salah doesn't defend and I have to cover Trent. That would be a big problem for McAllister. So I think the dynamic where it is at the moment is probably a bit more optimal. King
KTS, 2 players for you. Vert or Musiala. They are.
I mean, they're serious players.
If you put both of those players into Liverpool would be brilliant again. But
so, there's a question for you then.
Go on.
If we can get Vert this summer,
£100 million roughly,
would you do it?
What's my budget? That's what I'm saying. Because what am I giving up for that? Do I still get me left back and me right back?
I mean,
you centre forward.
You still get your left back.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll do a right back personally. Okay. Just because the market's awful.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see if
that is. Gomez is like, I'm Bradley there.
Yeah.
That's a risk because they both get injured all the time.
Just because Wirtz is at Leverkusen, he will move from Leverkusen at some point, and he's brilliant at being a number 10. He's just absolute signature 10. Probably doesn't do as much industry on the defensive end, but
I would worry. I mean, obviously, I would love Wirtz at Liverpool. If he's £100 million, if your budget's like £300 million, then yeah. If your budget's £150 million, then you're probably going, there's a lot, but then the sales to include in this. So, I mean, listen, yeah, the answer's yeah. I would like Wirtz to play for Liverpool.
What happens with Szoboszlai then? Moving deeper?
I think at that point, you can almost, you have to, well, it's a battle for your place, mate. Get in the team, not my problem.
Yeah.
Sort it out. It's almost like a Gakpo Diaz situation of, I can only pick one of you, play well, you know what I mean? Because there's a few of those, Slot doesn't mind that.
Would you sell Elliott to fund that then?
Yes, I love Harvey Elliott, but the manager doesn't pick him. So at this moment in time, Harvey Elliott is really a non-factor in this Liverpool team because he's not playing.
Yeah.
So,
but you're looking at like a £50 million asset there or something as well because of the age he is. You know what he offers as a player. Yeah. He's won leagues and things like that for Liverpool, homegrown and all that. So you could get a serious fee for Harvey Elliott. So in theory, if we're playing Championship Manager, it's just around the show for a bit of fun. Yeah, but a cold version, a miserable version where we're just throwing out players who are scouts and everything. Yeah, but we're getting £100 million players as well. Trent leaves, Timbercash leaves, Endo leaves, Elliott leaves, Nunes leaves. So that probably gets you whatever that gets you in terms of a transfer. Maybe that gets you 120 million. Kelleher, did you say? Kelleher, 150 million pounds you got to spend. The budget's already there. Then in fairness, I think you go Kirkes. You've already got the goalie sorted, don't worry about that. Yeah. Striker. And then what's left? If there's money left for then the 10, yeah. And then I would, but all you're doing there, Josh, you are saying you're going to try and get through a season with Bradley and Gomez at right back. And are you comfortable doing that? That's the trade-off for going and spending £100 million on a number 10. There will be somewhere else in the team that probably do, because money isn't infinite. I know the owners get a lot of stick and I understand it, but also there are rules around how much you're allowed to spend. Yeah. At some point it becomes pie in the sky to do this. So I suppose it rounds it up. To get that number 10 with the money you'd spend on it, it would have to be a £100 million player. Something has to give. Yeah. I'm just looking at Wirtz now. Let's have a look at when his contract expires. Because it is interesting to think about how much he'd cost. Yeah, so he's 2 years on his contract as of this summer. So you could argue if he's going to move, it might be this summer. But he's very, very good. Like, I mean, there's no way you get a free run at him. Can I throw one at you? Can I throw one at you? Sign Wirtz, Szoboszlai right back. I was just going to say, if we did that right, where we signed them, Szoboszlai would end up here, wouldn't he? Yeah. Just would, mate. Like, Jones has already ended up there. I can see it happening. I reckon he'd be alright. Yeah, I saw the white, to be honest, but I don't think he'd be happy about it. Like, yeah, I don't think he's best pleased with it. Absolutely. So, did we come to a conclusion? He is upgradable. It would cost you a lot of money to upgrade on him. And maybe there's bigger fish to fry. Is that where we've got to in this hour's chat, roughly? Yeah, that's probably where we are with it. I think I would, just because of those factors, because of how realistic it is and the other stuff that you've got to do, I think we would probably stick rather than twist. But we've also just said that if Florian Wirtz got offered on a plate to us, we'd take him and put Szoboszlai right back. So, I mean, go figure.
Yeah, hopefully that was let us know again. Obviously, thanks everyone who joined us live. If you're watching or listening to this, get in touch, whether in the comments section. Do you use social media? Yes, stick or twist, Dom Szoboszlai. What would you do? It goes back to Rafa's building a plane while you're trying to fly it kind of thing. Yeah,
I thought you were going to say the short blanket one.
Or the same thing. Yeah, short blanket one's probably better. Right, you're pulling the blanket into number 10, but the right back's freezing. That kind of thing. So let us know all that kind of stuff. Thanks to Josh. Thanks for you guys for watching or listening. We'll be back with another deep dive next week, and your Chrissy P will be back in the building. See you all there.